So we've rigged this up so that we have a control sphere here that allows us to control our squareness really easily. The problem is it's completely independent of the light rig. So if I move this light over here, the controls don't go with it. And the problem is, watch this, if I were to, for example, come over here and do this the quote-unquote easy way, I could select the light poly controls and then control-click the light poly locator and add a dynamic parent, right? And that works. So now when I move around my light, the controls move with it. That's pretty good. Except if I scale the light, it's also going to scale and squish that control, which I find a little bit ugly. It's a cosmetic issue. It really doesn't matter. I just don't like it. I would prefer it not to scale like that. So we'll just make a rig that makes it so that that doesn't happen. So here we go. Let's do this. First of all, I'd like to select this item, and the very first thing is I want to change its color because it's a little hard to see. So let's go to the display and click on Add Draw Options. That's going to let me change the color of both the wireframe and the fill for this object. Now, when I rig this up, maybe we'll do this in a more complicated future rig, but what I do is I actually let the color of the light define the color of the locator, just so that I can see which lights are warm or cool or whatever. But in this case, let's just do this with a user color. I'll set this to a nice kind of orangey color, and I'll set the fill to also a user color, but maybe kind of a very pastel yellow. And that way we'll be able to see it a little bit better in our scene. So that way it's just much more visible. Now what I want is for this object to define the position of my controls locator, but not its scale or rotation. Okay, so watch this. Let's just abstract this. Let's say add item, locators, locator, and let's set its size down to 0.1 again so it's a little easier to see. I'm going to move it up some so we can see it floating right above our object, right? It's right there, and say this is where I want for my controls to be all the time, kind of right in front of the light. So I'll take this locator, and I'm going to call this my controls mount, okay? And then I will make that a child of the light poly locator, right? So it's right there. It's going to move with it. So if I move this, the mount moves too. Perfect. Now I'll take this light poly controls, control-click this guy, head over to my constraints, and add a position constraint. Perfect. So now what I can do is hide that controls mount so it's not even visible in my viewport. And now when I rotate this guy, the controls move with it. If I move it, the controls move with it. But if I scale it, nothing happens because our light poly controls are completely separate in the rig, which is a really nice thing to be able to control. So this is what I mean by abstracting information. You want to keep things as separate as possible so that if you have two sets of controls, you want them right there, visible at the root level. Also, mesh items, you want those right there visible. You don't want them buried in some big tree. And so by using dynamic parents and a clever combination of position and rotation constraints, we can really get a nicely controllable model. Great.